What's up, coders? It's Derek from the Derek Codes YouTube channel. And in this episode, I wanted to branch off of the data validation guide I did some time ago, which was part one. This can be part two. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into data validation of your HTTP requests. So any of that data that's coming into your controllers, we want to make sure that it's exactly what we want. So I actually mocked up a great form. It was based on one of our clients that came in and needed some help. And I actually built this out specifically to show you some of the different options that we need to validate. So as you can see, this is a pretty beefy form here. There's a bunch of required fields, different types of data. There's dates, there's strings, there's checkboxes, all different types of stuff. There's going to be some photography that needs to be uploaded, a proof of purchase, it says here, all sorts of stuff that people need to select things from. But the point is that what we're going to be doing is validating to make sure that this data that's selected is the data that we intend to receive. So really, really important. I can't stress this enough that over the years of development, what I have learned when I look back at, hey, how could I have done that better? Why would I have to come back and touch something again? Was because most of the time that I didn't completely flesh out the original parameters of what we were trying to do. So for example, this product size that we're looking at here, there's just a few different boards that people are trying to select from, and then there's an other. Well, back in the day, maybe I would have made that column in the database a string, so you could just fill out whatever and just shove it in the database, right? Well, today, do a little bit differently. In validation, we're going to actually ensure that it's one of these four options, can't be anything else. So that way we can ensure that when we're putting it into the database, we're going to know exactly what it is. And our database is going to have an enum set up, which is like an array for a column type, where it's going to be one of these four options as well. So I'll run through all that in code, but here is what we're going to be doing. Wanted to run you all through this. So what we're going to be doing is building out the validation of our store method in our controller to consume all this and validate all this data, and then we're actually going to insert it into the database. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing that we want to do is actually set up our migration for this form that we just reviewed, this big warranty form, and it's a fairly large migration. This episode is really just about validation, but I wanted to at least show you the migration that I wrote to set up the form to kind of get started, because it kind of leads into the validation, right? I think I'd mentioned just a moment ago, some of these fields we're going to have in our validator as, for example, this role, this enum here, which in enum, if you're not familiar, is an array of options that you can choose from. You can only choose one. And our validator is going to have the exact same logic, exact same options for the user to choose from: homeowner, dealer, retailer, or builder for this warranty, like who's filing this warranty form. And I want my database to have the exact same options. There's a lot of different reasons that you'd want to do this in your database. Number one is just data integrity. You can't just shove anything into the database. Number two, it's speed. Enums are a lot faster to search on than just text entries, so that's pretty cool. And then three, it's kind of version tracking as well. So if we ever want to change this, we would write a migration to then add another option to this enum array, and then we'd be able to have a commit in our GitHub logs or our to-do tracker or whatever, our project management tool, to say, hey, this is why we did this, because the client wanted it or what have you. So the other thing I did was I added a default value of blank. Even though we're going to have this be a required field in the validator, I always err on the side of caution, in that worst case scenario, something crazy happens, you're editing the database manually for some god-awful reason, and it happens as a developer, right? We got to do it. We're just trying to get something in there, and it's going to error and say, hey, you got to choose one of these options. It's like, I'm just trying to change something really quickly and mock something up, or who knows what I'm trying to do, right? So I have the default value as empty, and there's an empty value in this enum, so we won't get any errors. The other thing is, the rest of these will be all strings, which is a maximum of 256 characters by default. You can always change that as well. The date, that's just the MySQL date. There's no time associated that. Here's some more enums for different options. same type of default options that I set up above. Soft deletes, always recommend soft deletes. It's one of those things where in an associative database like this, where one thing relates to another, you never really want to ever hard delete anything. And that's obviously a touchy subject right now, and that's pending any privacy concerns that are going on out there right now. But in this type of environment, you never want to delete anything, because we're going to have a record someday that's going to point to an ID in a different table, and it's not going to be there. And that's going to be a huge problem. So these soft deletes, what this will do is actually hide this data row if this column is filled out. It's a date column that shows us when it was deleted. So again, huge for tracking. You know, hey, whatever happened to this? It's gone. I can't see it anymore. Well, you deleted it yesterday, right? We can actually point to that type of stuff. So it's pretty cool. I always recommend having those in there. And then timestamps is that next row right here. That puts an updated and a created timestamp on the database row. And that's really important too for knowing when it happened. So I always come back and add those kind of things usually if I forget to do it, or I'm like, I don't need it, and then sure enough I end up needing it. The other cool thing I wanted to point about this migration is, again, Laravel uses what they call snake case. So if you create a model called warranty, your table is going to be warranties, the pluralization there. So keep that in mind. And then when you're creating an associative database structure, like we're going to have files, right? It's not warranties files, it's a warranty files. These are warranty files. So it's one warranty that's files, it's possessive, you know? So keep that in mind too. Otherwise you have to update your models to point to a different table name than what it would normally look for. Kind of a pain. And as you can see, I did the same things I did up above. I added an enum here with the default type of blank, which was the file type. I had my timestamps in there. I didn't add a soft delete on this because I wasn't going to give them the ability in our admin area when I get to that point to actually delete the files. So that wasn't a concern of mine. But what I did do was add a foreign key here. And again, we'll get into the database stuff probably in a separate episode. I added a foreign key here on this warranty ID. It actually links it to the warranties table. So we'll always know that this file will always have a warranty. And then on the chance that the warranty up above here is deleted, this row right here, what this does is link these foreign keys, and on the time that this one's deleted, it'll delete all the files too. So pretty cool. Important to keep your database clean. That way there's not files out there that are completely abandoned and have no reference to the existing warranty at all, for example, in our case. So that would be a reason to do it. And then obviously too, just to keep your database clean. You don't want millions of records building up over time of stuff that you didn't even need. So pretty cool stuff. So the next thing I did was actually already create my models as well. I created a warranty model. And again, if you don't know how to create the models already, go back and actually watch episode 1 of creating how to create an API. We go over all that fun stuff there. But I already created these models. So it's an empty warranty model and a warranty file model. Now my warranty file model is completely empty, and warranty actually has an association to it. So a warranty has files, as we already discussed. So what I did here was actually write the method to call when you're looking for the files. So you grab a warranty, you want to get the files of that warranty. It's going to have many files potentially, right? So we create a whole other separate table to hold all the files that can be uploaded on behalf of a warranty. So this is how we do that. We reference the model here in the has many on this association. So just to kind of walk you through what that is, I added some default data in the database. I had one warranty and then one file that's associated to that warranty. And just to show you on the command line, what you can do with Artisan is actually use what they call tinker to tinker with the data to actually interact with your models. So it's pretty cool. So what I'm going to do is create a warranty variable that equals app warranty, and I'm going to get the first one. Oop, syntax error. There we go. So I got my first warranty, and as you can see, I just kind of smashed the keyboard here, and just a lot of this data is blank, right? The beauty of having that database set up where you can have default values. It was really easy for me to do that. But now that I have this warranty variable, I want to get the files. So I say warranty, dereference, files, and I want to get them all the files. And because of that association on that warranty model, we can then easily get all of the files that are associated to that warranty with that syntax. And you can do this not just in Tinker, but you do that in your PHP code as well. All right, now that we've created the database structure, we've created our models, now what we want to do is create our controller, which is going to control all the data that's coming in via the API. I already created the controller, but let me jump over to the terminal and show you the command that I use to do that. I know we already ran through a lot of this in how to build an API part 1 and introduction to validation part 1 and things like that, but wanted to at least review that one more time. I used the artisan command to make controller, and then specifying the path, which I always like to organize all my controllers, because as your project grows, it's nice to kind of categorize if this is just an API controller. Well, I put in an API folder. So that's what that API/warranty controller is. And then the space-R is an attribute to create a resource controller. So it's going to create all the methods that we need: an index, a create, a store, a show, all that jazz for us in our code. So that's what all these methods are here. These were all created automatically for us. So that's pretty cool, very, very helpful. The next thing we want to do is actually create our route. So we're going to jump over to the API routes file, which if you don't know where that is, in your base folder structure, it's under just routes and then api.php. So pretty straightforward. As you can see, I already filled this out just to save us some time so you're not watching me type. At the very top, we added our namespace declaration there to use that warranty controller. And the only reason you do that is to save you, some kind of messy code and save you time as you're typing. Because if you don't, what you'll have to do every time you reference warranty controller would be something like this. Not something like this, it would be exactly that. So it saves you a lot of typing if you just add that namespace up at the top. And then here's our post route to the warranty endpoint. So we're in the API folder. So any of these routes in here would be under your website /API/warranty. And it's a post, and it's referencing the warranty controller, and we're going to be hitting the store method. So again, I use Insomnia. You can use Postman or whatever REST client you like to use. But I have our example API endpoint already in here on the Derek Codes website, our API warranty URL. And as we hit it, you'll see this successful, but it's actually not returning anything yet, which is okay. If you ever get an error and you feel like your routes file is correct, Laravel does cache a lot of data a lot of times, and what you can do to actually kind of clear that up is use the artisan command, and it's configs:\clear to clear the configuration settings, the environment file, the .env file, and to clear your routes, you can use route clear as well. So, and then vice versa, if you want to cache those routes, you'd say route:\cache, for example, and now those routes are cached. But it happens every once in a while. You're adding a route and then you hit it and you're like, well, where's my route? It's not working. And you're like, oh yeah, it's cached. So normally when you're developing, I would just have that cleared out from causing you any issues, basically. But all right, so let's go jump back over to our controller. Where we're going to be editing is the store method here, because storing is obviously what we want to be doing when someone's posting data into our API, when they're filling out our warranty form here. And what I'm going to do, I know it's super fun to watch me type, but I'm going to knock out all this validation for you and then jump back here to explain it all to you. So just to save us some time so you're not having to stare at the screen while I'm just typing away. So be back in just a moment. We are back. That was quick. So what I did was add all the validation rules that we need for our store method here to accept all the data from our massive warranty form that we're mocking up here. And as you can see, why I jumped offline to do that is it's really pretty beefy compared to a simple example that we did a while ago. Setting up all the array of validation rules, we call the validator based on, we're passing in all the request variables that are coming in, we pass in the rules. If it fails, I like to control the data. I don't want just the validator to return, the error structure that it likes. I like to always have my consistency whenever I'm coding, so I handle it. If it fails, I'm returning some JSON here that says the status is 0, because I love having a status boolean in my code and to work in my APIs. And then it returns an array of errors that I can loop through and print out to the user. But on success, this is where we'd obviously go through and add it to the database, save the files via storage and things like that, and return status 1. So that is something that we'll save for another video. But let me go through this validation stuff with you, because there's some pretty cool stuff happening in here. And I made it a little bit more robust than it might need to be. The main thing to know is the role here, for example, remember we set those up as enums in the database. So you can only have one of these different options. So what I did is it made this field a required field, because that's what our form informed us that it was. And the values have to be in one of these options. So it has to be home builder, dealer, retailer, or builder. So really, really cool, because when you hit that API endpoint, if you put in, I don't know what I am, or I'm an unknown, or I'm other, whatever, it doesn't matter. The API is going to give us an error. It has to be one of these. So really, really cool. The concern is required. It's just a string. It can be however long we want. Same thing with first name and last name. Email is something that we talked about before. The type of email is pretty loose in what it allows. As long as there's an @ sign, it pretty much lets it through. But you can specify additional attributes here to this filter, or this this validator, I'm sorry. And the one that I really like is filter, because it uses PHP filter, or the PHP's filter var method, to actually validate the email address. So that seems to be work really great in my experience. There's a ton of other ones as well. Is the email address RFC compliant, which is the governing body that kind of tells us how things are supposed to be structured in the web. Is the DNS valid? Does it look up? A lot of it's overkill. Some companies can fail. I really love filter var. It's simple and it works. The other thing I did here, and it's just kind of neat to see, is with this structure in these validation rules, you can chain rules. So it's required. It's an email with the attribute of the filter, so making sure it's a valid email address. And then what this here does is the unique method specifies the database table. So remember, ours is called warranties, and the column that we want to ensure that this email address is unique for. So I just threw this in there. This might not be a good use case scenario in the real world, but for the case of our example here, I wanted to show you that you can allow people to only fill out, let's say, one warranty. Like, you can only file one warranty claim and that's it, for example. You can only be in this database once. You have to be unique. So this allows us not only just to provide good validation data to our API and to our database, etc., but you can use Laravel's validation to kind of solve some of that business logic as well, which is kind of cool. So if your client wants you to say, hey, only one email address can submit a request ever, this would allow you to do that, for example. So the rest of these fields are really straightforward. They're just strings and they're required, except for address one, which I made nullable, so it's optional. And that's something you'd have to do in your database as well. I'd have to look back at our migration. I don't think we did that. I'm gonna have to actually add that option to make that nullable in the database. So let's jump over there and take a look. It is not nullable. So what we'd want to do here, if this is a real life scenario, is this. address to would be nullable. That way you don't have to specify anything. With our controller, go back here. These are very straightforward. There's a required string. The purchase date. This is pretty cool. It's another awesome kind of business logic use of this. It's a required date field, so that's kind of neat. But this next rule here that we chained in is that it has to be after or equal to 1 year ago. And there's a couple different options here you can use to validate. You can use after or before, or we used after or equal to validate those dates. And the one I use is 1 year ago. Just say, hey, if you purchase this purchase date field, if this comes in, if it purchased over a year ago, it's out of warranty. You can't file a claim, right? So again, I don't know if that's a good use case, but I wanted to show that example here for you. And what's really cool about this field is that this string you enter in here, there's no real structure. It uses PHP's string to time to transpose it into a date. So basically the sky's the limit. You could say is equal to minus 1 year to give you that, or 1 year ago, or 30 days ago, or whatever you want. I'm gonna leave it at 1 year ago. So it's really cool. And the one thing I think I mentioned before, and I always love to mention, is having that documentation up on your screen is really, really important and helpful to always be able to reference things quickly, because there's a lot of stuff that Laravel provides. If you want to go to their validation section and search for available validation rules, you can see everything that you can validate a request on. And as you can see, it's pretty beefy. I mean, some of this stuff is really, really pretty cool. So one of the things that we won't do in this example, but we do all the time, is stuff with passwords, for example. So you can actually have a password field specified and then specify the password field as confirmed. And confirmed here, for example, I'm going to click on this. They even give the exact same example for password. So what you do is have the password field as a required string, right? And maybe some min-max settings to it, so you have a good secure password. And then you have another rule that says password underscore confirmed. So you can actually specify it as something that needs to be entered twice. And if they don't match, for example, it gives you an error. So really, really pretty cool stuff in here. Is something unique? Is it JSON? Is it a MAC address? Is it an IP address? We're using this in feature. There's a lot of great stuff in here. So you can even delve into, and we're getting that into a later video, is a little more advanced if this then that type functionality, where it's required if this happens. So if a rule value is such and such that comes in, if this request variable is triggered, well, then this value has to be within this range, for example. So you can kind of chain your validation rules, so to speak. So it's really, really pretty cool. Let me jump back over to our code here. These, again, are fairly straightforward. They're just like our enums in our database. They allow their required options that have to be in one of these, set parameters. So it has to be one of these, a 2x6, a 2x8, or another size, for example. No questions asked. So really pretty helpful there. The next part here, again, this is really cool. Something you use all the time is validating an array of images or array of files. So our proof of purchase on our website form, let me jump back to that form really quick and I'll show you right here. So you can add multiples here, right? So what's really cool about the validation is this proof of purchase input variable we have here. It's required, right? We have to have it, and it's an array. So that's pretty cool. It's saying, hey, this is going to be an array, right? Well, an array of what? So this next line here defines this variable that's coming in dot star. So all the elements of this array are required to be a file. So it's any type of file. So it has to be a posted file. It can't be a string, can't be an integer, can't be an email address. It has to be a posted file. So file's really open-ended. It can be anything. So what I did is I chained another rule here to identify the MIME type. So again, this is not looking at just the extension. Laravel actually parses the file, guesses the MIME type of the file, if it's a PDF or a JPEG or, I don't know, CSV file, text file, whatever the case may be, an SVG. So it actually does that MIME type validation. So it's not just looking at the extension, and we don't have to have nearly the concern of like someone's trying to spoof the extension, like it's an exe file and they renamed it to PNG, right? So this is a MIME type analysis here, and I'm saying, hey, we're only going to allow JPEG, PNG, and PDFs. And again, this is just an example to show the power of what this can do. But keep in mind that I've ran into a lot of issues that the average user doesn't know how to take a photo. I know that sounds really crazy. I mean, doing this a long time, people, they're like, hey, send me a screenshot of the error that you're looking at or what have you. Well, they'll send you like a Word doc, because they'll take a picture and then they'll bring it into the Word doc and then they'll send you the Word doc. It's the craziest thing, but it happens all the time to me. I don't know why, but that's what happens. So you might need to make this a much more loose restriction than you would imagine, unless you thoroughly document your front end to say, hey, this got to be this type of file, or this, then that's it. The next thing was the images. It's a required array, and each array element is required, and it's an image. An image, I think they define it on Laravel's site in the validator here as what you'd imagine. So it's like JPEG, PNG, SVG. Let me pull it up here. Where is it? There it is. Image file. JPEG, JPEG, PNG, BMP, because apparently people still use those, GIFs, SVGs, or WebPs. So really pretty cool. Again, like I just said, I don't know if I would restrict this to images. I'd probably just make this a file and let people upload whatever the heck they want, and make sure if my security permissions on my files are legit, just so we don't have any executable code or anything like that if someone uploaded a PHP script. But just because of that reason, people don't really know how to upload stuff when you're asking for things. And the last thing when someone's trying to file a warranty claim is probably make them mad. But anyways, you get the idea. The power of this validation is pretty robust and necessary, right? Because you want to protect your data in your database. You want to protect your time so that you're not having to go and hack something together later on. So now in your administrative area or what have you, you know exactly the data that you're going to be dealing with. Same thing with your files, your images, and things like that. So it's definitely really helpful to know what you're dealing with, and really a necessity. So now that we've created all this awesome validation, let's jump over to our REST client and actually see it in action. So I'm going to refresh this. And as you can see, I'm not posting anything. So I get a status 0 and a ton of errors. It's really pretty cool, right? So let's try and fill out the role here and say my role is programmer and hit refresh. It says the selected role is invalid. So super cool. We provided a value because it was required, but it still yelled at us and saying, yeah, that's not right, because it's not with one of those parameters that we defined, which was homeowner, dealer, retailer, or builder. So I'm going to say I'm a builder, for example, refresh it, and now that role error disappears. So pretty cool there. Same thing with images. Let's check out images, right? We're going to provide a value for images, and it's going to yell at us. It said that this must be an array. What are you doing, dude? Right? So I'm going to make it an array, post it again. It says, hey, it's an array, great job, but it's not a file. It's got to be a file. So let's jump over here and make it a file. I'm going to choose a file here from my desktop. Choose a PDF and hit refresh. And now the error goes away. So let's jump over here though back to our code, because remember this was images, I made that a file. So if we said an image, if this is a required image, we should get an error because this was a PDF that I chose. And we sure do. It says, hey, it's not an image, this is a PDF. So pretty cool that it actually looks at the MIME type, determines what it is that you're uploading, and then, barks at the user accordingly. Thank you so much for watching this episode. I hope you liked it. Be sure to comment below with any questions you have, ideas for my next video, or anything else that's on your mind. Also, like and subscribe and click the bell icon to get alerted of my next episode. Until next time, keep coding, everyone.